You take your health very seriously. You eat clean, train consistently, and you do all the right things. And maybe you've tried fasting, cold plunges, sleep tracking, whatever it takes. But despite all those efforts, your health and your performance are still struggling. You wake up tired even after a full night of sleep. Some days you feel fine, other days your body won't cooperate. You're easily overwhelmed, frustrated, and running on fumes. Maybe your digestion is off, your brain feels slower, or weird aches and pains keep showing up. And the most frustrating part, you're not just some lazy guy who eats like shit and never moves. You're actually putting in the work. And at this point, most guys assume they just need to push harder, be stricter, or do more. But that mindset is exactly what keeping you stuck. Because the real problem isn't the effort or the discipline, it's that you're unknowingly making at least one of the four fundamental mistakes that are sabotaging your health. Let's break them down. Mistake number one, relying on motivation and willpower instead of building habits that actually stick. So one of the biggest reasons guys stay stuck is that they can't maintain any of the positive changes that they make. And I'm not talking about being lazy here or being undisciplined. That's not the issue. The problem is relying on motivation and willpower instead of having a system that makes consistency more automatic. Let's say you clean up your diet, you start taking all the right supplements, and you actually finally commit to better sleep. And for a couple of weeks, things improve, you feel sharper, you feel more in control. Then life happens. Work stress ramps up, you travel, your routine gets disrupted, and before you know it, you're skipping your meals, you're missing workouts, and you're slipping back into old habits. And a few weeks later, you hit a breaking point and start the cycle all over again. You never actually build some momentum. Or maybe you take the all or nothing approach. You go all in. Perfect diet, perfect routine, but the second something throws you off, you stop completely instead of adapting. Because you see health as something you have to be on or off with. You never stay consistent long enough to actually move forward. Most guys think consistency is about trying harder. But the real issue is that their habits aren't built to withstand stress, unpredictability, or fatigue. They rely on unrealistic routines, to be honest, that only work when everything is going smoothly. So every time life throws a curveball, your progress resets back to zero. And the problem with this, every time you restart, you don't just lose progress, you make it harder for your body to adapt. Your nervous system becomes more stressed, your metabolism less efficient, and your gut actually more sensitive to change. So instead of building momentum, you're constantly wasting energy just trying to get back to where you were. And if you don't break this stupid pattern, you'll stay stuck managing your symptoms instead of actually improving your baseline health. You always feel like you're playing catch up. And that brings us to the next big mistake, focusing on the wrong problem. Most guys who struggle with their health and their performance, it's not like they're doing nothing, they're actively trying to fix their issues. But the problem here is they're usually fixing the wrong things. And instead of addressing the root causes, they're often focusing on managing their symptoms. Let's take your energy levels. Maybe you feel drained, so you drink more coffee, you take adaptogens, or you might even use nootropics or peptides to push through. And that works, usually for a few hours, maybe for a few weeks. But then you crash, so you keep the cycle going, more energy hacks, more recovery tools, more peptides, more everything. The real question is, why is your energy so low and unstable in the first place? Or let's say your testosterone is low. Maybe your libido is not what it used to be. Your motivation is off, or your recovery is slower. So you start taking test boosters, dialing in your macros, maybe even considering TRT. But what if the real issue is your chronic stress hammering your nervous system, or your body is not absorbing your nutrients properly? And if you don't fix those real issues, you're just slapping a band-aid on much deeper dysfunctions. And this happens because our modern health culture encourages symptom chasing. There's always a quick fix, there's always a new supplement, a protocol, a hack that seems like it should work finally. And when you're wired to solve problems fast, it's easy to think another supplement or another hack will finally fix all your issues. But real health does not work like that. And the real danger, treating your symptoms doesn't just delay your progress, it can actually make all of your issues worse. If you're masking fatigue with stimulants or adaptogens or peptides, you're pushing your system often deeper into burnout. And if you're boosting testosterone without fixing your stress, you're adding fuel to a broken system. And over time, you definitely create some dependencies here. You're relying on external crutches just to function instead of fixing the root issues. So instead of getting healthier, you're just becoming more managed. You're keeping symptoms under control, but the underlying dysfunctions are still running in the background. And eventually, it will catch up to you. But even when guys stop chasing symptoms, many still make another very critical mistake. They try to fix their health by adding more instead of removing what's actually hurting them. A lot of guys try to improve their health by stacking more and more good habits, better supplements, more recovery tools, more biohacks, more meditations, more gadgets. But all of that is kind of pointless if they're not removing what's actively hurting them. Take stress as an example. You feel overwhelmed and burned out, so you think, I'll start meditating. That's a great idea, but if you're still overcommitting, you're working late, you're sleeping like shit, and constantly pushing your system, meditation is really not going to fix your problem. You're trying to offset stress, which is nice, instead of actually reducing it, which would be better. Or let's say you want a better digestion. So you start taking probiotics, digestive enzymes, peptides, and other gut health supplements. But you're still eating processed food, drinking alcohol on the weekends, and you're running on 5 hours of sleep. You can add all the good gut health tools in the world, but if you don't remove what's wrecking your system, nothing is ever going to change for you. And why do guys do this? Because adding is much easier than removing. You don't have to change your lifestyle that much. You just stack another habit on top of what you're already doing. So you get to feel like you're the great optimizer while still holding on to the very things that are keeping you stuck. And that is the trap. You think you're working on your health, but in reality, you're just spinning wheels. Your efforts are canceling each other out. And worse, you waste time, months, and often even years trying to fix problems that would have resolved themselves if you had just removed the root issues first. So instead of actually moving forward, you end up in this weird cycle of constantly looking for more. The next supplement, the next protocol, the next tweak, when what you really need to do is much less. You don't need more, you need less. And until you remove what's holding you back, nothing you add will ever move the needle. But even if you remove the right things, there's still one more factor that can silently sabotage almost everything: how your body responds to stress. Your body has two primary states: a stress state, the so-called sympathetic mode, and a recovery state, the parasympathetic mode. You definitely need both. Stress is useful when it is temporary. It helps you focus, it helps you train, and it helps you handle challenges. But the problem is, when your stress becomes more chronic, your body will stop prioritizing healing and recovery, and you will get stuck in survival mode. And this is where a lot of people go wrong. They assume that because they're eating well, they're training regularly, and they're taking their 10 supplements, their health should be improving. But if their nervous system is locked in survival mode, those interventions will not work as they should. It's like trying to renovate a house while the foundation is cracking. Let's take the guy who's dialed in. He trains smart, eats clean, tracks his sleep, but his HRV stays low. His deep sleep is terrible, and he often wakes up exhausted. His body still perceives stress, maybe from gut inflammation, nervous system dysregulation, or unresolved emotional issues. And no matter how perfect his routine is, if his nervous system still thinks it's under threat, it will never prioritize deep recovery and deep healing. Then there's this other guy who feels like he's recovering fine. He tracks everything and sees that his strength is stable, his weight isn't fluctuating, and he's hitting his macros. But something still feels kind of off. He's getting through his workouts, but he's not adapting. His joints ache more than they should. He gets weird inflammatory responses, skin issues, sinus congestion, and random food sensitivities. Why? Because training is still a stress signal, and if the body is already at its limit, it treats everything, even good stress, like an additional threat. And the reason this often goes so unnoticed is because stress feels normal when you've been living in it for years. Your body adapts. You stop realizing how bad you feel because your baseline has been so low for so long. And because you can still push through, you convince yourself, I'm actually fine. But the reality is, your body doesn't just handle it. Chronic stress wrecks your metabolism. It tanks your testosterone, it disrupts your sleep, and makes real deep recovery almost impossible. And even if you're doing everything else right, if your body is stuck in functional survival mode, it will not respond to any of your healthy lifestyle choices the way you want it to. And here's the frustrating kicker. Stress hijacks decision making. So if you're in survival mode, especially for a longer time, you crave quick fixes, caffeine, stimulants, shortcuts. You're reinforcing the very cycle that is keeping you stuck in the first place. And until you break that cycle, no amount of optimization will ever fix the problem. So let's step back and look why all of this happens. You struggle to stay consistent because you're relying on motivation instead of good systems. You focus on treating symptoms instead of fixing the root causes. You keep adding more good habits without removing what's actually hurting you. And worst of all, your body is stuck in survival mode, so it's not prioritizing healing and recovery. And these are not random mistakes, they're usually connected. So if you're stuck in a chronic stress response, your body is more reactive to all kinds of bad habits. If you're constantly managing your symptoms, you never get to the real problem. And if you're always starting and then stopping, your body never has time to fully adapt. You're not stuck because you're not trying hard enough. You are stuck because all your effort is kind of canceling itself out. And now picture the guy who actually breaks free. He's not grinding harder, he's working smarter. Instead of chasing hacks and quick fixes, he builds reliable systems that make consistency more effortless. He removes what's holding him back, so every change he makes actually sticks. And most importantly, he shifts out of survival mode, so his body finally starts working for him instead of against him. And that is the real takeaway here. You don't need to do more. You need to do what actually works, the right things, in the right order, in a way that works with your body and not against it. And if this resonated with you, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a nice comment below. And if you want to dive deeper into fixing any of these issues, check the link in the description for more resources. Thank you and see you in the next video.